A fort chock full of walking dead. In the swamps. Wonderful.
Blood West! Is it great to be back or what? We ride once more, revisiting the fine and beautiful landscape of swampy scenery for the Act 2. Last act ended on... cozy. Eclipsium. Welcome to the Creepshow walking simulator of the 2025. Sudden and pleasant game. From time to time a weird, interesting, or unusual game pops up on my radar. Something like Void comes to mind. This is similar, a pleasant morsel of great game dev potential. Although not as good, and this time I have a lot more critique towards the game in question. But spoiler alert, I am inclined to like this one. So without further ado, let's jump in. So again, this is a walking simulator, a genre of fairly mediocre dogpile of games like Dear Esther, and this is why I have mixed feelings about Eclipsium. On one hand, it did feel unique, although not sure about that. This game has its own identity, but when your identity is Cry of Fear set in a northern journey, it kinda lopsideds the entire unique thing, but it's still great in atmosphere. And on the other hand, this is a goddamn walking sim. A despicable choice of a genre on games dev side. And you might say, but Johnny, the Steam page says it's a horror game, isn't it horror? We will get to that. Short summary, it isn't. It's a trip and step, a walk and look, a touch and hallucinate kind of experience. But horror, it is not. Yet, this is the best game within cesspool of Dear Esther likes. And the whys are pretty obvious. Walking sims are built on visual or narration. If they fail to engage you visually well, then someone somewhere fucked up harder than Randy on Borderlands 4. Eclipsium has pixelated, no, scratch that, brixelated graphics. It's polygonal, like obvious it is, but the size of pixels is real chunky. Not to imply that it isn't great. Oh no, on the contrary, it is very PS1, very retro, done tastefully so to speak. However, it does make my eyes tired after a while. I feel like had I not finished Cruelty Squad like a week prior, I'd have a lot more trouble with the visual style, and I'm certainly not dying alone on this hill. Look at Steam reviews. I usually treat negative Steam reviews, well...
Your online critiques are real useful to some. Now have a good time eating boogers and cum.
yeah, that's about right. But here I agree, actually it can be muddy. That being said, there is a setting that can change that, but I will play on the intended graphics for the sake of reviewing developers' vision, even if YouTube will compress the fuck out of the footage. I pray to God this video still has a bitrate by the end of it. And to be real for a second, I wouldn't pick quote-unquote better fidelity even if I was playing it for myself. This game has a lot of models that depend on the chunks, so to say. Like, edges and shapes are the one thing, but almost amorphous suggestion of a model is something different entirely. And in a lot of cases, chunksels make your brain finish the picture. This kinda locks you into a weird loop, where as the shape gets closer to the player, abstraction becomes a suggestion, becomes an interactable object, and this constant swapping makes your brain feel engaged in a very entertaining and specific way. Aside from that loop, there is a broader design strokes, obvious and comprehensible locations like forest, mines, a great cuckold paralysis demon, ham march of sacrificial pigs, the meat tornado. Meaning is open to interpretation of course, but events are at least to a degree clear. What I can say with a certain degree of, well, certainty, is that whoever did the environment either A, had a bucket load of shrooms, or B, went under for a surgery. And this is why I even think about Cry of Fear when I'm talking about this thing. I remember going under for my forearm surgery when I was like 15 or something, and I remember vividly how mushed your brain feels. This is a bit more coherent than the actual Bad Trip, but yeah, similar as fuck. Eclipsium operates on the dream logic. And same can be said about music. It ranges from, yeah, okay, to violin player contorting in a 12-minute long seizure while the violin itself is stuck 12 inches deep in his ass. Like, it would not surprise me if the composer just started shrooming the fuck up while writing. Like, I imagine him sitting in a dimly lit studio apartment listening to Mozart, and like 40 minutes later the coffee table is on fire, the shit smeared all over the walls, and 16 different tracks blast on the background while he's trying to pull his foreskin over a mic to get a better sound. And again, Eclipsium operates on the dream logic, and it's done right, like forest and suddenly, oh, a big factory, but you haven't fed yourself to the machine with the forest fairy mudfish monster inside, and the sacrificial eye turns into song because of submarine needs to be exploded, and it exploded like obviously, have you never entered a whale?
Machine, turn back now.
The transition from a normal forest to a parthologist nightmare cave exploration is seamless. Actually, it's fucking not, and we'll get to that. But yeah, smooth. Now, usually spoiler section comes up later in a story department, and had this been a comprehensive, understandable game, it would be the case here too. But story is, I don't know. You want to dig into how tentacles in the darkness reflect main character's inner struggles with acceptance of constipation. I ain't the one to dig into that kind of a deep meaning. But really, when the game has this level of visual consistency, nearly anything can be a reference to a phallic innuendo subtext in the paintings of the early Renaissance still life. So spoiler section is for the views only. Roll the tapes for those who want to complete it themselves. Skip to here. Now that the dues are paid and I have extensively sucked the balls of devs in praising all the good this game has to offer, it's time for the bad. In this case, it kneecaps the strengths of this game. A lack of consistency moves you forward, and about that. Cry of Fear is not the only game I felt a connection with. In this case, the other one is Half-Life. This game loves to pop, but when in Half-Life it was a necessity, here, loading between levels are not subtle, and in a different game I would not notice, but here, a second of pause is enough to break you out of the visual hypnotic immersion. When I have to think about anything such as ammo, enemies, objectives, location immersion goes back in the priority list. Here, there is nothing else, so this is a big deal to me, and I don't really see any other people talking about it. Seeing the seams of flesh code is immersion breaking. So to be blunt, this is not a game, more like a movie. I'm sorry, the substance is not there. It is too short and too long at the same time. Just add one enemy, blinking mechanics, anything. As is? No, like this is not gameplay, this is a sluggish mass of input. At least this has inputs, unlike fucking Mixtape. Some people clearly found walking speed problematic and slow, but that is not exactly fair. Immersive atmosphere is there, so quite honestly, it could have been like 15% slower, and I would not mind. But I've seen some weird fucking comments about the game that honestly is fitting, like look at this fine philosophist. The fitting review, just as cryptic and indecipherable, and for what it's worth, he can be accurate. Who's to say it wasn't about child potty training fears? Speaking of fears, now we came to the most important part of the critique. This game is not what it's advertised at, horror aspect. I'm not big on horrors, really I'm more of an anything but kind of guy, but it doesn't mean that I don't understand the mechanics of a proper horror. There are 3 types of horror: car crash, cancer, and a car crash cuckold. Let me explain. The first one is your fast food horror game, your jump scare tension reliever, simple setup like dark room, any primordial fear really, silence, darkness, loneliness, that kind of stuff. And then it's like being on a lethal car crash. Like, it doesn't matter if you were scared or not, since you're dead, but we all know what kind of color the inside of your pant leg will be once coroner arrives. Cheap, fast, predictable, repeatable, the definition of fast food horror. Second is your golden standard, your cancer fear. It doesn't put the obvious oogly boogly at you. No, this is the type of games that convert your anus into a high efficiency hydraulic press, because they make you clench so hard you'd shit diamonds at Fed Pole. Your Cry of Fear, your Outlast, your Alien Isolations, the games that hinge on the premise of you are never safe. The fear that scratches to the back of your mind constantly, like fear of cancer. The third one is a spawn of banned by Napoleon French literature. This is your witness trauma generation. This is watching 2 girls 1 cup on a Sunday morning type of games. The game that makes you live through something so skin irritating, so violent, repulsive, so unpleasant that a weaker mind would just go, nope. And honestly, this is what made me have a problem with this thing in the first place, is that it stops halfway. It doesn't go in any of the 3 directions, and not because of it went its own direction, it just stops. No jump scares is fitting, but the game is not nearly as creepy and scary as it should be. And a lot of tension is lifted when you manage to die. In this type of games, if there is no anchor to tie you to the reality of consequences, it loses all possible scariness. So type 2 cancer horror is just impossible. And if you go psychological horror direction, then don't go and evoke some sort of deeper meaning. Here, unless you're a vegan, this is not a psychological trauma generator. Horror, no horror here. Horror not. Alright, I've played this game 4 times at this point, and I find it great. It's not a horror, it's not a game, and it certainly has no lazy moments. This is a passion project, and it is good, unless you want to be afraid. In this case, go somewhere else. Again, Cry of Fear is free, but Eclipsium is really memorable, and dare I say unique. I may never play this thing ever again, but I will remember it fondly because quality is definitely there. You know, this entire game reminds me of a funny situation. It's like 10 a.m. about 2 years ago. I sit down on my PC doing something, I don't know, I get a call in Discord. My friend is laughing hysterically in the mic like a maniac and goes, "Dude, I brought pillowcase to work." I'm like, what the why? And he goes, and I quote, "Fuck if I know, I just woke up and had a strong notion that I must not forget to bring my pillowcase to work. So how is it relevant? Fuck if I know." See you next time in medieval times.